value, which is 2, and put that in the denominator here. So the period would be 2 pi over 2, which is pi. Vertical translation is 6 units up from here. And for the phase shift, what I did here, as you can see on the right side of the equal sign, I factored out a -2 from the argument from here. And when you do that, you get this. And I'll bring you back to the bottom of the screen here. Remember the even odd properties that say that if you have theta and negative theta, with the x's don't change, the y's do. They're opposite of each other, but the x's are the same. And remember, cosine is the x coordinate. So this negative right here, it's as if it wasn't there. It equals to this. It equals to +2. Why? Because positive theta gives you x, and negative theta gives you x. Gives you the same thing. So the cosine of this negative angle is equal to the cosine of the positive angle, +2. So we're just going to graph this one, which is the same as this one right here. They're equivalent, the same graph. So I drew the yellow line here for the vertical translation. It's a cosine graph, so we know that. Oh, and then there's a I almost forgot, there's also a phase shift pi over 2 to the right. So right here, okay, and then instead of pi, it's going to be at 1 1/2 pi, so 3 pi over 2. And then the other one would be, instead of 2 pi, it'd be at 5/2 2. 5/2 pi, I'm sorry. There. Okay, so the zeros for cosine are 1/4 and 3/4 of the way. So at 3 pi over 4 and 5 pi over 4, and again at 7 pi over 4 and 9 pi over 4. Okay, the maximum, there is no reflection here, so the maximum is the beginning and end. So start from the line y equals 6, from the yellow horizontal line, you count 5 units up. So we land on 11. So at 3 pi over 2 it's 11, and 5 pi over 2 it's 11. The minimum is in the middle. So the middle in this case is pi, and so we go from the yellow line, horizontal line, we count 5 down, so that's going to be at 1, and again at 2 pi. So here's period 1 and 2. So the 2 periods here. Now normally we start graphing from the y-axis, so you can do that too, where, see, 2, 4, you would land right here, and then right here. Okay, just to complete it, just so it crosses the y-axis, you could do that. And so this is actually 2.5 periods, right? And so if you could leave it like that, or just erase the right side up until, up until 2 pi. Alright, so I highlighted one period of this function, and I also drew the vertical translation line, the one that raised, the one that shows how much it went up. Because the maximum point here is at 8, and this is at 0, so I know that it went up 4 units. That's the midway point. Between 0 and 8 is 4. Okay, so I know that it went up 4 units right here. And then the amplitude is -4, because there's a reflection over the x-axis. And that's it. Okay, so to get the amplitude, we look at the highest point on the graph and the lowest point on the graph. So the highest is at 7, the lowest is at -5. So we take 7 minus -5, we get 12, divided by 2 to get the average, and we get 6. So the amplitude is 6. Just going to change the color so it's more, okay, 6. Now, for it to be, how high did it go up? If it's at 7 and -5, the maximum is 7, the minimum is -5. Well, it had to go up 1 unit from the x-axis, so that this is 6 right here and this is 6 right here. So it went up 1 unit, and there's the equation. For 73, the amplitude is 1 because you look at the highest point, which is at -2 right here, and the lowest point at -4. So you do -2 minus a -4, which is 2, divided by 2 is 1. So the amplitude is 1. For the amplitude to be 1, that means that the 0 line should be right here, right in between them, right in the midpoint. So that would be between -2 and -4. The midpoint would be -3. So oh, and another thing, there's a reflection because notice how it starts on the bottom. So this would be -1 right here, or just negative cosine, and then it went down 3. Okay. For 74, the maximum is at -3.5, and the minimum is -4.5. So right here, this is -3.5, and then this would be down -4.5. So that total distance is 1 unit. When you cut it in half, it's half a unit. And there's a reflection over the x-axis because notice how this starts at the bottom here for the cosine graph. So it would be -1/2 right here, -1/2, and it went down, well, halfway between -3.5 and -4.5. The midpoint would be -4, so it went down 4 units. Okay, for 75, there is a reflection over the x-axis. We're now looking at sine graphs. So the amplitude is 3, so it would be -3. And the b value, as you can see right here, the b value turns out to be 2. Because we took one period, the period from from here to here, from here to here is pi. And that's why you see the pi right there. And then we solve for b, cross multiply, and we get this, which is 2. There is no horizontal translation, so that would be 0. So the equation would be -3 sine 2x, just like that. Okay, so for number 76, there is no reflection over the x-axis, so it's just the a is positive. In this case, it's +2. And then, as you can see the work right here at the bottom, 2 pi over b is 4 pi, because that's the length of a period in this problem. And so b ends up being 1/2, and that's what we put right here. And this is 0. There's no horizontal translation. So 77, we have an amplitude of 1. So I'll put a 1 here. And then the b value, as you can see in the work on the bottom below the graph, we get b equals 1. And so you would normally set it up like this, like what I have here, and then distribute that b to each one. Now it happens to be a 1, so 1 times anything is itself. So in here I would have a 1 and then a pi over 4. So then the equation would look like this, cleaned up. So I don't need a 1 in front of the sign, so I'll just put sine x minus pi over 4. So that's what it would look like. Now you might ask, why did I highlight that part and not the other? Remember, you try to make the least, we're looking for the least amount of horizontal translation, and then by highlighting this part, a was positive. I could have highlighted this part, and then a would have been negative, and the translation would have been to the left. Okay, for 78, the amplitude is 2, and it's a +2. I highlighted again the period that I'm looking at to write the equation. It looks like the picture itself is not, it doesn't look like it's 100% like it's right over. If you look at the tick mark and the curve, it's not exactly on it, but this is the best we can do to evaluate or to write an equation. So we're going to assume here's one period and here's another period, and notice how it took 3, 4, 5 tick marks to complete. So that means that for one period it's going to be 2.5 tick marks, and 2.5 tick marks is 5 pi over 4. Okay, because from here to here is 2 pi, so every tick mark is pi over 2. So if it's 2.5 tick marks, then that means it's 5 pi over 4. Okay? So, solve for b, cross multiply, so this gives you 8 pi, which you have up here, and then equals 5 pi b, so you divide by 5 pi, pi's cancel and you're left with 8/5. The horizontal translation is half a tick mark to the left, so that's negative pi over 4. And then you set up the b on the outside, and then you put x plus pi over 4. That's the easiest way to get this up here, to write it like this first. And so you use distributive property, so you have 8/5, and then right here minus 2 pi over 5, which becomes positive, right, because it was to the left. So the equation is f of x equals 2 sine 8/5 x plus 2 pi over 5. And so that would be the final equation. Okay, so for part A, I just input the equation onto decimals, and here you have it. Okay, you don't have to put the y equals, the calculator knows, so I just put in the right side of the equation. And this is a graph that I got. Okay, now this equation is for 1 year, from January to December. So that's why I only highlighted in yellow from January to December. And the dots represent the sales each month. So this should be a discrete graph, because, you know, there's no in between January and February month, like there's a total for each month and that's it. So this would be the total for January, total for February, March, and so forth, April, all the way to December over here. So it's asking you for the maximum, in which month did they have the maximum sales. So December is even higher than January, if you notice that, right? So this would be December. And then when did they have the least amount of sales? That would be down here. That would be May, June. Okay, and that makes sense, right? Because of what they're selling. What are they selling? Snowboards. Okay, and that's it.